I don't have to tell you, this is an extraordinary film, and obviously a labor of passion and love on the part of everyone here. But Todd, maybe get us started. What inspired you to write a movie around me? What inspired you? What led you to the story of Lydia Tarr? And maybe I can start by saying something that I know that maybe the audience doesn't, which is that you were a very accomplished musician. That was your first passion.
Well, I don't know how.
And an actor.
No, yes, I was an actor. I am a card-carrying member of the Screen Actors Guild. But I did start out as a jazz musician. That's actually how I kind of got into acting. The impetus for the script was essentially I'd been thinking about some things for a couple of years. It was the beginning of the lockdown, and I was trying to escape my family. So there was I had an excuse to go upstairs and close the door. But seriously, it was it was just some it was such a difficult time for all of us. We're all trying to we're losing loved ones, and it was a terrifying time, and it was just trying to figure out sitting down to write a script if it that it should matter, at least for me. And so I'd had this idea for quite a while about this child, sort of, that grew up out in Staten Island, and from a sort of limited, household in terms of being exposed to anything other than, pop culture, who sort of saw music as their salvation, and had sort of ran toward that. And the idea was that we find this child now turning 50 when that music has sort of delivered them to a rather different outcome than what they imagined, where they're sitting atop a large cultural institution and having to deal with the politics and the sort of maneuvers that are required of somebody that's in essentially a figurehead position in many ways, that has a lot more to do than making noise, which is what they started out doing.
That's fascinating, Todd, because Cate and I were talking just a few moments ago that one of the glories of this movie is it has no elevator pitch, right? It's not about one thing that you can easily name, right? It's a profound character study. But for you, the basic impulse was the story of somebody who's elevated, emancipated in a sense, by a passion for art, and then how that passion gets turned into a career, basically, into a profession.
Exactly, but really the idea was to try to look at the examination of power, and is there a way to talk about power and talk about the sort of pipelines of how these things work in terms of the two-way street nature of power, how complicit we are in our relationships in terms of power, how we enable certain kinds of behavior having to do with the currency of power and things like that.
That's fascinating, yeah, because that is an elevator pitch for the movie. It's
a
study
in power. I'm working on it.
In aspiration and power. You said to me, Todd, at one point, that you weren't writing it hoping that Cate Blanchett would do it. You were writing it for Cate Blanchett to do, and if she didn't want to do it, you wouldn't have wanted it done.
Yes, that's true.
And with that in mind, yes, exactly. With that in mind, Cate, what was your first reaction to the script, to the project, the idea of it? What drew you to it?
Well, I always think of acting as being a conversation. You're in conversation, depending on what medium you're acting in, you're in conversation obviously with the other actors, you're in conversation with the script, and in film in particular, you're in conversation with the director. So I wanted to be in dialogue with these people here, and then the story, of course, and the character come after that, because I feel, in a way, it's not just about the construction of a character.
Okay, excuse me, Cate, because stop you there, because that's fascinating. Your first impulse is, who do I want to be working with for 6 months or a year? Who do I want to be in concert with? Even more than what is the story that they're telling.
Well, it's like, you go to a dinner party, and some dinner parties lift off and some don't, depending, who's around the table. I mean, it's. I mean, Peter Brook always said that great directors know how to cook. Now, I've never eaten one of Todd's meals, but I suspect you're a really good cook, because you know how to assemble a group of people, and that's not just the actors, but also the production designer and the costume designer and the cinematographer. Everyone on set was part of a really dynamic conversation, and it was made manifest. Actually, I'd never felt more alive, and the situation being more, in a safe way, dangerous and exciting, because even though the structure of the screenplay was absolutely impeccable, and I'd never read a screenplay like it, I thought, you don't need to change a syllable here. That when we got on set, I'd say to Todd, well, the big print here says that Todd does this and this. Is, oh, don't worry, the writer wrote that. Just don't worry about that. We're going to do this. And so it was so kind of, it felt so open-ended and of the moment. And that was all that I thought was, I had hoped for, working with Todd, having seen his previous films, and obviously wanting to work with Nina for such a long time, and getting the chance to do that. And then, of course, the challenge of the character, which was monumental and terrifying. But I learned from many years of working in the theatre, you stand in the wings ready to go. It doesn't matter how many years you've done it and how many times you've played this character or done this show, and this Nina inside out. Is you stand in the wings and you think, I am so fucking nervous. And I've learned over the years to say, no, I'm excited. And so to translate that anxiety.
To tell yourself.
To tell me, that I'm excited.
For yourself.
Very excited.
But the specificity of this part involved, in addition to all the internal work, external work too. You had to master a great deal of music and making yourself a credible musician and a credible conductor.
Credible. They're credible. Sounds like there's a compliment in there somewhere. You were credible.
And incredible. Let's say incredible. And incredible.
Okay, that's what you meant. Right, incredible. Of course. No, you were incredible. No, I have had a director come up to me and say, you do a take, and he said, let's just keep it within the bounds of plausibility. I was like, okay. Incredible. Yes, there was a lot, obviously. I mean, all of us. I mean, Nina is basically a concert pianist, and has played the violin many times, so you had it easy. But, I mean, I had, there were certain things that one had to do from the get. There was so much to do, there was no time to be nervous. And I had to do those things just to get to earn the right to play the scenes, because it's not, as you've seen, it's not a film about conducting. It's set in the classical music world, but the main character could have been an architect. It's about someone striving for excellence, and someone who is estranged from themselves, and therefore all of their relationships and their actions are somehow they're estranged from as well. But there were certain things that one had to do in order to get to play the scenes. Yeah.
And did you study? I know you did, but who did you study with? How did you go about learning to be an incredible conductor?
Well, we had the great good fortune of working with the Dresden Philharmonie, and they were an incredible bunch of musicians who also had to act. So we said to them on the first day of rehearsal, I said, look, you're not actors, and I'm not a conductor. So, between us, we have to find our way together, which is basically what you have to do anytime you create something, right? You have to find your way together. Every ensemble has to do that. But it was during the pandemic, so there was not a lot of face-to-face time. So I went online, thank God for YouTube, and Ilya Musin, who's one of the great conducting teachers, had recorded a series of masterclasses, I think back in the 80s. And so I started with him. And just
watching it on YouTube and
And then I have a friend who is a conductor who helped me understand what the right hand did, what the left hand did, what it felt like to stand up on the podium, and how for women still today, it's still 70% of that is a political act every time you step onto the podium. And
but political act in the sense that the active assertion of authority isn't itself political.
Well, that when you, I don't want to tell tales out of school, but when we were, but I will. But when we were rehearsing, the Dresden Philharmonie decided to program Mahler 5, and they had a male conductor conduct it, and he watched our rehearsal, and he came up to me and he said, you know, he said, you're good. I think you could be a conductor. He said, you're much better than most of the women out there.
Oh.
And I went, sorry? You know, when someone says that to you, you think,
You misheard, yes.
I must have misheard
Yeah.
you. And I said, I'm sorry. And he said, it's such a shame because it's, you know, it's all this positive discrimination. They're just not ready. And you know, as a woman, oftentimes you have all of these witticisms things that you wish you said to that fucker, you know, when he said that. And I played, believe me, I'm still playing that conversation out with him. But, you know, there's still a prejudice there. And
Yes.
so even though...
He was Russian.
He was, we're not going to name names. But, yeah. Anyway, but it's, you know, the great thing about Todd's screenplay, and I will shut up now because there's so many other things to talk about, but the great thing about Todd's screenplay is that the fact that she's female, the fact that she's in a same-sex relationship, those things are totally immaterial to the story. She deserves to be there. And so therefore, because she's a woman, I think if the man was playing the role, you wouldn't be able to have as nuanced a discussion about the nature of power and the corrupting nature of power. And so I think that the conversation was much more than a political act.
Right,
you know.
right. But that's fascinating. We wouldn't, if a man were playing the role, because a man would be so boring and obnoxious in the thing that the complexity of her ascent and her.
Look, I think that, you know, we often complain in our industry that we get into ruts and we can get formulaic, but then you touch the classical music world, and Sophie, you would know this much more than I would, but the kind of the weight of history and the weight of the institutional way in which the music is made, particularly when you're approaching the big works, is so overwhelmingly male. The canon is so overwhelmingly male that for a woman to insert herself in there is it's still, unfortunately, it's politicized.
Yes,
You know?
and
And I mean, some of the greatest conductors working today are women.
Yes.
And the fact is, they're just great musicians. And I think that is what Todd has described. He's described, you know, someone who happens to be a couple of great musicians, 3 great musicians who happen to be female.
No, absolutely. Nina and Sophie, jump in, please. Nina, I didn't know that you were a musician yourself and playing a concert master. Not a. We'll count you
No,
as
it's,
one.
it's very, very sweet and kind of Kate to say that always. I do play the piano. but
Very,
I'm
very well.
not a pianist. So yeah, I studied the piano from when I was 6 or so, and then there was a certain moment in my life where I thought I might want to do opera. So I studied that for a while, for 4 years and so. And so I have a little musical background, which helped. And also I've played the violin twice before in films.
In movies, yes.
In movies, so I think that's what got me the job. Because he asked me in the Zoom call.
No,
"Do you-
that's not true.
So you come with the
play- and
violin
it's
like
great
you come
that
with your violin
play
like
violin."
Chaplin
And
with
I
his
was like,
cane, right?
Yeah. And so yeah,
But no, I think the reason that it was a pretty quick conversation. Kate and I said, "Well, who should Sharon be?" And we both said Nina Haas at the exact same moment.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know Nina Haas's work. We all
Absolutely.
know your work from. And what a dream for us to all to be able to work with you. We've all long admired your work, and yes, it was lucky that you played the violin. But that was
So well.
I would have asked you anyway. So,
But it's not only a violinist, you're the concert master of the symphony. That's a fascinating part, right? Because she has both authority and she's like the Starbucks in Moby Dick. You know, she's second. She is the second lead. You know, she has to lead the orchestra, but she's not the one in authority.
Yeah, that was really what I found so fascinating to work on, because in a way, those 2 women are an institution in their own right. So I wanted to reflect what happens if you are around or with someone who is in a very powerful position. You yourself are in a very powerful position in your own right, but you are not innocent in that moment. You enhance a system because it comes from a point of love. I had the feeling she is really in love and respects and admires Lydia for the musician that she is. But also she enhances, she wants her to stay there where she is. And she is kind of saying little things, and that was something that I loved so much about the script, that I could find all these little, sand corns where I thought, why does she say these things? Why does she say our daughter has a problem in school? And then she knows, and then what's going to happen, because she might not want to do the dirty work, but she knows exactly what's going to come out of this. And then she said, oh, now she has no problem anymore. And all these, I found it so fascinating to look for all these details in the script and in our relationship. That was great.
One of the most moving moments for me, and who was it? I guess Jimmy Stewart said, "Movies give us pieces of time, little moments of reality of that we do." And for me, one of the most moving moments in the film is when the two of you are together at the end of the day with Count Basie playing in the background and a glass of wine. The sense of intimacy and complicity between the two of them is so beautifully articulated and gives.
Thank you.
Yeah,
but I found it so interesting that it starts off that she has a heart problem.
Yes.
She comes back from somewhere where she had a big success in New York, but the partner is at home having problems, to immediately get her back in to reality and to life. So that is rich. It's a rich relationship. That was great.
The two of you incarnate that beautifully. Now, Sophie, you, if I may turn to you, working with these two extraordinarily distinguished actors, but this is your first rodeo, really. This is your first part in the film, right? And you're coming to us as an actual, honest-to-God cellist.
Yeah. I'm not quite finished with my bachelor degree yet, so we still got.
Oh, you actually haven't? You still haven't finished your
I'm just turned 21.
bachelor's in cello?
I'm still studying,
And
which was actually kind of terrifying because when we started filming, I was 19, and I hadn't had an in-person cello lesson for 2 years because of the pandemic.
Oh, of course, right.
And you do all these live recordings for the film, and you know that they're going to be there, and you're like, I have no one to tell me whether or not this is good or not. But I mean, I think.
Well, I'll tell you, Sophie, I am 37 years late picking up my diploma, so you can keep working on it. But obviously, the question everyone asks, I didn't know until Todd explained to me that you were not Russian, in fact, and that you were actually from the north of England, right?
Yeah, I mean, I am half German, half British. My dad is German, my mom's.
So the question everyone must ask, and it's fascinating. How did you go about learning the dialect and the sound? How did you enter the character?
Well, I like everyone.
YouTube seems to be the secret of modern acting.
I mean, that was just for my audition because the first round of auditions I did were just in my British accent, and then I think they wanted to kind of see if it would be something that we were roughly able to do. So I spent a few hours on YouTube
yes,
trying my best for the Zoom audition that we had, and then when I actually got the part, I was really lucky to work with two dialect coaches. One, called Helen Jane Simmons, and then your lovely assistant, Inna Resna, who is Russian herself. So it was this lovely kind of balance of, someone who could really teach me to adapt or say, or I guess produce all the different sounds, and then someone as a point of reference. And this, I don't know if maybe being a musician and having done a lot of learning pieces by ear and having a really developed ear and having grown up doing a lot of oral training help with that.
Yes, it seems to be like a cross-reference, right?
Yeah.
If you have a well-trained ear, you also hear. We all know that's true about opera singers, you know, that they do. But I didn't know it. Do you remember, Todd, the first time you registered that Sophie had mastered this sound and this person?
Well, the truth is her YouTube stuff was pretty good. You know? I mean, when Avi Kaufman was our casting person, and we had seen literally hundreds of cellists, and finally we kind of given
Of all
up.
nationalities.
Of all nationalities.
I know a lot of
Yeah.
them. It's very embarrassing.
And finally we said, well, maybe we should just find an actor that can kind of hold a bow. You know, we were kind of at wit's end, and then this this self-tape came in from this 19-year-old cellist, and I actually I had no idea that you were British, because the first thing I saw, you'd already done this YouTube accent. So that was the first thing I heard, and I just thought she was Russian.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until we called her back that I found out that she wasn't. But in terms of you mastering the dialect, I mean, you got to work pretty quickly with that dialect coach, and also with Ina.
Yeah.
By the time you turned up on set, I mean, it was
Yeah,
it was
I
pretty
mean,
perfect.
It
So.
helped a lot.
That's terrific. Now I'm going to ask everybody a question that I know will infuriate Todd, because it sounds like it's violating every superstition. But this film has been so extraordinarily well received. I remember being on the set and leaving thinking, well, this looks good to me, but who knows how come together. But the film came together in such an extraordinary way and has gotten such remarkable praise for, obviously, Cate, for your performance, and I can see the alarmed look in your eye, like you do not want to talk about it. But it does fascinate me. Todd, you've been away you haven't had a new film in 5 or 6 years, and how do you respond to that? How do you react to that? With total panic and concern, or with a sense of that this is working?
I mean, we made this film, because we wanted to be able to have people have conversations about it, So if people are having conversations about it, then hopefully it was worth all of our time, I mean, that's why we make films. That's why we perform. That's why we act. We're all storytellers here. So.
Well, one of the things that fascinates me about the conversation, and I hope we'll have more of it tonight as well, is that it's been about exactly the things that you were felt most passionately about the nature of self-emergence. I even sensed when at the opening scene, right, that the account that Lydia is giving of herself at the beginning is not can't be the totality of the truth, right? That was the beauty of how that scene is written, that even an idiot like me can sense that there's an element of self formulation here. And that seems to be what most people are talking about how we construct ourselves.
Indeed, yeah, and we've talked about this a lot, which is, how important it is when people talk about their careers or their paths, that there's always this sort of Batman origin story, that we all have this great mentor someplace, In this case, it's ostensibly Leonard Bernstein, which in fact it probably was never Leonard Bernstein. That became part of the story.
That's that beautiful moment when you see all of the Bernstein records
exactly.
and tapes.
And yet some of what she's constructed is absolutely true. So it's like this.
Well, she is a great conductor.
She's a great conductor, and she has done these things. Those are facts. So there is that strange sort of cubist construction for all of us in terms of the stories we tell other people about ourselves and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And some people, they've told this story so many times that they begin to believe it.
Yeah. No. Cate, did you feel that way too about the real subject of the film is exactly how we construct ourselves, present ourselves, and disassemble ourselves, or get disassembled anyway?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a moment in our lives, and particularly as actors, you know, when we inhabit other people's experience all the time, our sense of identity is kind of, it's ever shifting and ever changing. It's not a static thing, but there's a moment in our lives, whether it's when we're 20 or 40 or 50 or 60, when the painful realization that we are not who we think we are, and that other people may not subscribe to the fact that we are heroes of our own narrative. And I think that that's something that Lydia has to deal with. And also, you know, in the classical music world particularly, there's a sense that you have to have an origin story, that who your mentor is and who your mentor's mentor is, you know, gives you permission and an unassailable right to play the great canon, like your connection to the music. And of course, she doesn't come from that background, so she has to invent that narrative and then starts to believe that narrative, and therefore becomes estranged from her own origin story. And I think one of the most poignant moments for me when I first read the script was when her brother said to her, "You don't know who you are or where you're going." You know, and I think that it's like that's what sends her off on her third act. And so, you know, whilst she may say and do things that a lot of people find unpalatable and difficult, and I think that there's a lot of painful recognition. You know, we all do things that we hope no one's looking at. You know, you don't have to be a classical musician to be slightly manipulative, to tell a little white lie here and there that you think is kind, but in fact, you know, it's slanting in your own favor. But her bravest and most noble thing, I think, as a human being, as an artist, is to let go of the power. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself.
No,
Guys have been saying it all day. But Peter Brook says this fantastic thing about acting, is that you have to hold on tightly and you have to let go lightly. And I think when you are in a position of power, it's really hard to let go. And I think that in a way, I think it's the redeeming quality for me of her as a character, but also as an artist, is that, you know, our greatest triumphs as performers, it's, you know, praise is actually, and success, whatever that means, an external sense of success, is often the most dangerous place to create, you know, and you have to kind of let that go. And I think that therefore it's, in a way, you know, when I first read the script, you know, her conducting at that unnamed small student Asian orchestra, I wept and wept and wept. I thought, this is tragedy. And my husband said to me, he said, "In my end is my beginning." And he said, maybe this is her, this is that, and in fact, a happy ending. I mean, sorry, I don't mean in the massage sense of a happy ending. I mean a truly happy end. Okay, next question.
The Thai sense of happy ending, yes.
No.
But it's fascinating.
But you know what I mean.
I saw the film, I mentioned this to Todd, with my wife and my son, the three of us all together. And when we left, totally knocked out by what you all had made, one of us said, "Wow, but though that's such a shattering ending, right? Because her everything she'd ever wanted is ruined." And the other one said, no, the whole point of the ending is that she's now an authentic person and she's actually finally achieving what she really wants, which is to have however modest, having a completely, as you use your word, own her own history with this funny little Star Wars cult orchestra. And so that's, I think, the ambivalent beauty of that ending, is that.
But it's also, what I find really interesting is that it's like, what is truth? You know, like, you know, she says that Leonard Bernstein was her mentor. You know, I could say that Ingmar Bergman has been my mentor. Now, I've never met him. Right. I never met him, but I have watched every interview he's given. I have watched every single film backwards and forwards that he has given. So in some way, he has mentored me. And the fact that you go back to her bedroom and that she has imbibed and never had the opportunity to encounter a figure like Leonard Bernstein, but yet he has had a profound influence on her life.
Well, it goes back to what you're saying about YouTube. You know, I mean, it's like you go to it. There's all kinds of ways of learning. Yeah, totally.
No, I think that's what's so touching about it, and we all do that, right? And inevitably, when you're reading a biography of an artist, what it turns out, and you know, Philip Roth was utterly devoted to the example of Bernard Malam and just did take a chance. And then you find out they met 3 times, right, in that space. But it's true in a dramatic way. Yeah. It's absolutely right. I do want to get some questions from the audience because I'm sure you have a lot of them here too. Forgive me, I'm just going to sort of take them at random as we can. Lady right here. We have a microphone here, so we can. All right. This is an audience of actors, right? So, projecting.
Yes, we are. Except that mic doesn't work, but other than that, yes.
Stan,
You said it was extraordinary, just so everyone heard that. That's what I'm trying to say. I
think she said ordinary.
Yeah, ordinary. How ordinary was?
It's extraordinary. And in seeing at the end that the passion never left, it doesn't matter who you are expressing yourself to.
Right. Yes, that's one of the. So Todd, since we do have the screenwriter here, what was your intention? Or
Well, there's a Antonio Bricco is there's a great documentary on her if you're so inclined. And one of the things that she says in that documentary, this is the woman who, she conducted, it's spoken about in the interview between Adam and Lydia Tarr, which is at the very beginning, which is, she only is a guest conductor, right, for the Berlin Philharmonic and for the Met. In that documentary, she talks about, and it's like heartbreaking, she talks about the years when she couldn't conduct because she was a woman. And she said, what people don't understand is, you need an orchestra, that's your instrument. And if you don't have an orchestra, you have no instrument. So in the end, she's up there, yes, she has a click track, yes, it's, think what you might about what she's doing, but she has an instrument. Mm-hmm. She's not without an instrument. And that part of it, that was, I think, important.
Okay, can I ask you something, Todd? As a filmmaker, a filmmaker makes a film, right? And you need it. Can a filmmaker have what's the minimal instrument a filmmaker needs?
Well, a filmmaker needs a camera,
yeah,
and an idea,
yeah,
and these days a phone. People are making feature films on phones that are very good. And Sean Baker famously, right? So but to make a film like this, you need much more than that, and you need the equivalent of an orchestra of the finest players imaginable, and that's a fairly rarefied position to be in, we've been in this process. This is a process film. We've been in process together as a group, and we were even in, we did a concept album a few weeks ago at Abbey Road. It's coming out. The sort of expression of the music that she's trying to write in the film, along with Sophie Cower playing with the London Symphony Orchestra, playing the Elgar for real, and so we haven't really left this process, and I'm really kind of looking forward to stepping back from it and actually seeing the forest for the trees and seeing just how remarkable it is that we were allowed to do what we were allowed to do.
Yeah. Here.
This is great talk. Will it be available to watch?
That's a good question. Will this talk be on YouTube? Someone asked. But try. We will. Thank you very much. Here, let me go up a ways here, gentlemen here.
First of all, great job. Thank you for being here. This will be a quick question. This is for everybody. What was your best moment while working on this project?
Great question. Great, succinct question. Nina?
Well, I think I have 2. The first, or more than 2, but the ones that I want to pick. The first one is doing the scene with Cate, and actually the rehearsal, where we, the rehearsal of the first scene where you get to know Sharon. And Todd was there, and the 2 of us. And I just knew, things are something's gonna happen. there is just someone who is such an incredible marvelous, intense, passionate artist opposite you, where you go, oh, that's really great. I'm so looking forward to this ride. So that was one moment. And another one for me personally was, because since I've never been, I mean, when do you have the opportunity? And that's the great thing about our job, I find, that you can dive into other people's lives. And I sit in the first chair of an orchestra. Cate is in front of me on this podest. And we're both very nervous also to convince these real musicians that we have a right to be here. We did our work. We can do this, you know. And Cate starts, and the hand goes up, and then there's this sound. I even now get goosebumps. You're in the body of this orchestra, and it's the most beautiful, rich, amazing sound that comes out of these individuals that decided we're always going to create something beautiful together. And that was just stunning. So those were
There's no moment like when you hear
Yeah.
a great band,
Yeah.
beginning to play. Sophie, what was your?
I'm really struggling. There were too
All right,
many.
we'll come back to you. All right,
Yeah,
we'll
do that.
All right, come back to you. Todd, the whole thing. You don't have to.
All of it.
All of it. You have a favorite child. Well, mine was seeing a trailer with my name on it. That was that was the highlight for me. You know, and immediately sending the picture to my kids. Right. You know, a trailer says God. Seriously, and at the risk of embarrassing her.
No, I mean, seriously, I should say this. I mean, there are many. There's too many. I can't honestly answer that question. I will say that the moment, one of the very first rehearsals that we had with Cate and Nina and Sophie, when they were rehearsing the Mahler, and it was just the three of them and an accompanist and Natalie Murraybeal, who was the conducting coach, and just sitting there and watching them and saying, "Oh my goodness, you know, this is it." You know, I mean,
Something that existed for me as a series of inquiries and abstractions.
Yeah,
suddenly.
Yeah, precisely.
It's suddenly. You know,
yeah.
it's why we love the theater, and that's why writers
Yeah.
love to write for that. But I was just going to say that seriously, I had been running lines with my wife for our scene for about a week in London, trying to remember each thing, and I thought, wow, her part is sure boring because she just is, there's so much exposition. And then we sat down together and rehearsed, and Cate found psychology, drama, meaning, and backstory, because it was apparent where she was inventing, where she wasn't, in everything. And I came away stunned by the work that a great actor can do. That was really
Clearly, that was the most important memory for me. But I mean,
was
yeah. But that scene really is like a prologue.
Yes.
You know, so much of what comes, and I think you only realize that at the end of the movie or the next time you see it. But yeah, so obviously working with you, Adam, was the highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew that. I didn't want to.
Yeah. But look, I agree with Todd. It sounds very disingenuous, but every single day, I mean, really, there was always some challenge. And invariably, I'd get a call at sort of 6 a.m. and it'd be Todd saying, "Here's the thing." And whenever he says, "Here's the thing," you always know that there's some enormous problem or challenge that he's laying at your feet. But you know, great directors trust you with big challenges, and when you're trusted with a big challenge, you all know this. You rise to the occasion because there's a sense of you can do this. You know, like, so you're an amazing cheerleader in the way that I know part of you was thinking, "This is impossible. We're probably going to fail, but let's give it a go." And so you give it a go. So at most days we're like that.
It's true. My son Luke once said we spent a week with the director. You know Ed Zwick, watching him work, and he said, "I figured out the thing about being a director isn't the shots you make or anything else. It's being the one person who's still in the same mood at 6 p.m. he was in at 6 a.m. on the day." Some more questions from friends here. Lady right here.
Thank you. First of all, I enjoyed it very much, and I wanted to ask Cate, could you talk about power? I love to see a woman character who is at the head of the industry, who's powerful you as a very tall person.
Look at my shoes. I'm not really that tall. Smoke and mirrors.
You've been in played roles of great power. I wonder, as also an actress in the industry, do you come out of these roles feeling more powerful as a person? And also, does the lesbian aspect make her more powerful than if she had been a cisgender woman in a heterosexual relationship?
So
You played queens and elven queens.
Elven
and
Queens, yeah, I've got a good line of Queens. I mean, it is a meditation on power and the destructive nature of power and what happens when people get close to power, no matter what their gender or sexual persuasion. In answer to your question about her sexual orientation, what I think is amazing about the film and wonderful is that just is what it is. It's just so fucking normal, and it's just that's the relationship that they happen to be in. So it was just the relationship. So we just played like a relationship, which is, I think, is really great. And it's a part of the film, but it's not an underlined message of the film. I think that Todd is a screenwriter and a director of great nuance and really respects that an audience can deal with the complex world. And I don't think that the character, and this is maybe part of where I connected with her, I don't think about my gender at all until it stops me entering a door or someone else presents me with it as part of my entire identity. I think Lydia Tarr identifies first and foremost as being a consummate musician. She's a father. You know, that these are other things that she identifies with rather than her sexual persuasion or her gender. And in relation to power, I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. Do I feel powerful, or did I feel empowered by playing the role?
roles. In other words, when you play a role of someone who has power, does that actually act, and does that empower you in some way?
Well, I mean, I'd had a parallel experience running a major cultural institution.
I was about to say in back home.
Yeah, with my husband, I ran
Right.
the Sydney Theatre Company, which is the largest of the state theatre companies in Australia, and I was very grateful to be doing it with my partner, but it was quite lonely, you know, because you have we had 250 staff on rotation. It was a $30 million operation, and we produced, 19 shows a year, touring nationally and internationally. And also because we were the largest of the state theatre companies. So this is so boring.
No. It's on the contrary. No, it's fascinating.
Anyway,
So you were the conductor in a sense of that.
in a sense, but
Yeah.
so therefore we were responsible for the health of the organization, but also we had to be advocates for the sector. And each year that if you try to mentor upcoming artists and give mid-career artists opportunities, whilst you're advocating, you're running a charity in Australia, because even though you're a state theatre company, only 6% of your operating budget comes from the federal government, so you're basically fundraising all the time. And a friend of mine said, when you run this organization as an artist, 20% of your time you will get to practice your art. Right. The other 80% of the time you will be fundraising and advocating. And so you enjoy that 20% of the time and be careful that it doesn't overtake you. Mm-hmm. And I suppose you're in some kind of powerful position. But what I realize is it's quite lonely, because in the end the buck stops with you. And I did connect in my own small way with the isolation of Lydia's experience. And the conductors that I've spoken to and that I've heard interviewed and speak about their craft is that they are a lone musician, and their instrument is a human instrument. And traditionally, and this is where Lydia Tarr is the right person at the wrong time in human history, is that it's not a democratic process making that music, that the buck has to stop with the conductor. But yet we are living in democratic times, although, I mean, if you look at the leader of China, we are living in the century of autocracy, which, or kleptocracy, depending on how you want to analyze it. But this is another conversation entirely. But sorry, shut me up.
Where are you going,
What
Kate?
time is it? Okay, thanks very much. I'm just going to stop right there.
No, that's one place. But in fact, I think that actually that point is extremely well taken. We live in an era when autocracy and democracy are in contest, not just in an orchestra
Yeah, but,
or.
you know, but the creation of excellence,
Has an autocratic
and we all
aspect.
know this
Yes.
as actors, is that we cannot operate in a comfortable environment. It has to be a respectful environment. But oftentimes the advances we make as actors is when we're placed outside our comfort zone. And that was what I really relished working with Todd, is that he would ask things that always pushed the boundaries of us as performers, things that we didn't think we were able to do. But he gave us the courage, the respectful place to kind of take those risks into uncomfortable places, you know, because acting is not a comfortable profession, believe it or not. You know.
Maybe that's a good place to end with this audience. Acting is not a comfortable profession, but it is. Let me just add that see this film, which has, like all of Todd's work, the complexity, the ambivalence, the interior life of a great novel has just been an absolute joy. Everybody.
Thank you
for
very
coming.
much. Thank you. Thank you.